My name is Vanessa Harper, and at 35 years old, I learned that the cruelest wounds don't come from strangers. They come from the people who spend your entire life teaching you that you will never be enough. For 7 years, I tried to become a mother. 7 years of fertility clinics, hormone injections, early morning blood tests, and phone calls that always ended in disappointment. 7 years of pretending I was fine at family dinners while my body quietly broke itself apart, behind long sleeves and forced smiles. And through all of it, my family treated my pain like an inconvenience. My mother, Eleanor Harper, had spent most of her life controlling every room she entered. She had been a respected school principal for over 3 decades. The kind of woman people admired because she sounded confident enough to make everyone believe she was always right. My older sister, Claire, followed her into medicine and became exactly the daughter my mother always wanted. Brilliant, polished, admired by everyone she met. Then there was me. I worked in hospital analytics, buried in spreadsheets and reports no one cared about until something went wrong. My family reduced my entire career to one sentence whenever relatives asked what I did. Vanessa works with computers. That was my role in the family. Quiet, forgettable. The daughter who tried hard but never quite measured up. The truth was I had struggled as a child. Reading never came easily to me. Words moved around on the page like they were rearranging themselves when nobody looked. Instead of helping me, my mother treated it like a personal embarrassment. By the time I was grown, the label had already hardened into family truth. Claire was the smart one. I was the disappointment. Then I met Ethan. He built custom furniture for a living and listened more carefully than anyone I had ever known. He proposed to me over cold cereal on a Tuesday morning because he said love didn't need to perform to be real. For a while, our little house near the river felt complete. Then we started trying for a baby. The first miscarriage happened at 9 weeks, the second at 11, the third at 7. The fourth barely made it past the heartbeat scan. Every doctor used the same terrible phrase. Unexplained recurrent loss. I never told my family. I already knew what they would say. My mother would blame stress or age or my diet. Claire would use clinical language to sound compassionate while making me feel defective. My father would avoid eye contact and pretend the conversation wasn't happening. So I carried the grief alone until the 5th miscarriage changed everything. A specialist named Dr. Naomi Keller reviewed my entire history and ordered advanced genetic testing. No one had ever suggested before, not even my own sister, the OBGYN. The results came back 2 weeks later. I carried a balanced chromosomal translocation between chromosomes 6 and 13. Dr. Keller explained it carefully. The condition didn't affect my health directly, but during pregnancy it created a high likelihood of genetically unbalanced embryos that could not survive. The miscarriages were never my fault. Not stress, not weakness, not failure. Genetics. Then Dr. Keller said something that stopped me cold. This condition is usually inherited from a parent. That sentence cracked open something inside me, because suddenly my mother's silence started looking less like cruelty and more like fear. A month later, my mother asked me to help clean out the upstairs closets in my childhood home before she downsized. That was when I found the cedar box. It sat hidden behind old blankets on the top shelf of the hallway closet. The same box she had once yanked away from me when I was 8 years old. Inside was a tiny wear-upon baby hat, a hospital bracelet, and a footprint card with a name written across the top. Nathaniel Harper, my brother, a baby boy who had died before I was born. Nobody had ever told me he existed. I later learned there had been multiple pregnancy losses before him too. Miscarriages my mother had buried so deeply she spent decades pretending they never happened. And suddenly, everything made sense. She hadn't hated my weakness. She hated seeing her own pain reflected back at her. The genetic condition almost certainly came from her. She had watched me suffer through the exact same losses she endured. And instead of warning me or helping me, she turned my grief into shame because facing the truth meant reopening wounds she had spent 30 years sealing shut. That realization changed something in me, not into anger, into clarity. Dr. Keller helped us begin IVF with pre-implantation genetic testing. For the first time, embryos could be screened before implantation. Out of 10 embryos, only 3 were genetically viable. 3 real chances. The second transfer worked. At 26 weeks pregnant, I attended my mother's retirement dinner. 20 relatives crowded around the table while my sister celebrated her promotion at the hospital. The same family table where I had spent my entire life being diminished. I stood up quietly and said the words I had rehearsed for weeks. "I'm pregnant." The room froze. My mother lifted her wine glass, barely reacting. "Well," she said coldly, "let's hope this baby turns out smarter than you." My sister laughed. My father reached for the bread basket and muttered, "Can we eat now?" 22 people sat there in silence while my unborn child became the newest family joke. Then Ethan looked at me and nodded once. I reached into my coat pocket and unfolded the letter Dr. Keller had written. I told the room about the 5 miscarriages, the years of infertility, the genetic diagnosis. Then I read the final paragraph aloud. "This chromosomal translocation is inherited, based on family history and prior pregnancy losses in the maternal line. It is highly likely the patient inherited this condition from her mother." Silence swallowed the room. My mother's face collapsed. For the first time in my life, I watched certainty leave her eyes. Then she started crying. Not polite tears. Real grief. The kind that had been trapped inside her for decades. She admitted she had lost pregnancies too. She admitted she buried my brother's memory because she never learned how to survive losing him. And somewhere inside all that buried grief, she turned her fear into cruelty. Claire sat frozen beside her, a doctor who had mocked her own sister while missing the diagnosis, sitting inside her own family history. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into my pocket. Then I looked at my mother and said the only thing that mattered anymore. She doesn't have to be perfect. She just has to be loved. Then Ethan and I walked out together. 3 months later, our daughter was born healthy. When I held her for the first time, I realized something that changed my entire understanding of family. Some people spend their whole lives trying to earn love from people who decided long ago they would never deserve it. But children don't need perfect parents. They need honest ones. I kept the cedar box, not hidden away behind blankets anymore. Now it sits openly on a shelf in my daughter's room beside family photographs and storybooks. And sunlight. Because grief grows poisonous in darkness. And silence becomes inheritance if nobody finally speaks the truth.